And I get up here and just tell you these stories of God being active, but you don't really know much background about maybe about me. You might wonder if I've just come up with some of these stories. So I was just thinking I would just share kind of how it all began. Um, and I have to kind of go back. I was just and how long do we have, or what do we? Okay, till everyone leaves. Okay, all right. So I was raised in a contracting. My dad was a contractor, bricklayer. So we were all bricklayers, and so from a young boy, I was probably I was maybe like 8 years old. My dad, would get us to clean bricks, and so we'd take a chisel and we'd clean a brick, and he'd give us 5 cents a brick. And so we started contracting from my dad, and then pretty soon we graduated to the next thing and the next thing, and by the age of 14, I had hired my first employee. Anybody 14 here? Anyone around 13, 12? How old are you? 11. Okay. All right. So at 14, I hired my first employee. And when I told people before, they're like, "No, you were 24." It was your brother. Yeah. No, it wasn't actually. Yeah, it was a friend, and he was 13. And we literally would get dropped. You know where Fairmont Hot Springs are? Yeah. So my dad had the contract for all the villas, and so he would drop us off. We'd be up there for the summer, and we go from villa to villa. We'd be doing stucco wire, putting all the stucco. So at 14 years old, we got these kids. You put up in a hotel, and we'd be there for the summer. And when we'd first get there, contractor would be like, "Ooh, a couple kids show up," and then they would come to work at 8 o'clock, and then they would leave at 4, and we would come to work at 6, and we would leave at 9, and pretty soon they just left us alone. We were doing this. So what I kind of titled it is The Business of Accumulation. So what happens is we learn from a young age, if you work this hard, you get this much. So do people still do allowances now? You get allowance? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Do you have to do anything for that? Yeah. What do you have to do? Yeah. Okay. And so if you do more chores, do you get less or more? More. Okay. So if you do more chores, you get more money, right? Yeah. Okay. It's the same how it worked in my life. So if you do this much, you get that. You get a little bit more. So remember, I started cleaning bricks, and it was 5 cents a brick, and then if I could clean 100 bricks, oh hey. And so this is how it goes. So it's this process of accumulation. You realize, okay, if I do this, I get that. So there I am, I'm 14 years old. I hire my first employee. At 14 years old, I'm making $500 a day. $500 a day, 14 years old. No, stucco wire. Up in Fairmont. All the hot springs, right? All those villas. We were going from, right? And we would have a contract. We get $5,000 if we get a thing done. And so I was making $500 a day, 14 years old. Now, don't get caught off on the money. I'm just trying to paint a picture. So there I am. And so what happens, it tells you okay, if you work this, remember, what was your name again? Arlo. What is it? Arlo. So Arlo, he gets allowance, and if he works and does all these certain chores, and if he does more, he gets more. Everyone else, is your life kind of like that? Yeah. It was? Okay. So his life was like that, but Arlo's life is like that. For anybody else, life like that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we get this thing. So there I am. I'm going along, and and I'm finding that I start wanting to work a little bit harder. Maybe more employees. So I'm 16, 17, I'm making $1,000 a day. Now I wasn't allowed to tell anybody because the guys that worked for my dad, non-contract, were making $200 a day. But it was open for anybody. Well, so this is the process. So here I'm going along, and now I wanted to say I was raised in a Christian home. Now, not everybody's raised in a Christian home. My mom wasn't raised in a Christian home. My dad was sort of raised in a Christian home at one time. But I was raised in a Christian home. But at 14 years of age, I kind of was starting to choose a different way, and then work and making money became kind of that was my thing. And so I came to this time in my life where I was kind of like getting in trouble a lot. And my parents sent me away to a school. I don't know if any of you have been sent to a school that was very strict, but I was sent into the U.S. And, it was like, yeah, you couldn't even leave the school. So maybe it's like some of you, maybe, I don't know. Well, like prison. Okay, so, well, it wasn't quite like prison, but it was, yeah. But during that time, my brother got killed in a car accident. Okay? So I was raised in a Christian home, but I was kind of like, just working. And my brother got killed in a car accident. And during that time, I'm not going to go through the details, I wanted nothing to do with God, because people used to always say, well, God's good, he'll look after you, he'll do this, if you can trust God, it's like, nothing bad's going to happen, all good things work out. And but my brother was like killed. I was 17 years old, and it had it was very impactful for my life. So then, as I come out of school, I go deeper into work. I start even focusing more on work. I was just like, because what it did is it buried all my pain. Distract, especially, so there I was. So I'm going and doing all this work, and I'm just getting distracted, and I'm just speeding along here because I want to get the background. And the next thing you know, I get married, and we're going to church, and once in a while, but my heart wasn't there. My heart was, where was my heart? Work. Because I was making money. And pretty soon now we've got like a lot of employees. And I remember this one time I came to the point where it was like I was out of town all the time, we had done this big project. We built a Winners building. So Winners, I don't know, just a big warehouse. And what they had done is they wanted a certain timeline. So they put it out to the bid, and they said, whoever can get it built in less than 3 weeks, you had to be able to build it in less than 3 weeks. And if you could build it in less than 3 weeks, they were going to give you this bonus for doing it. So the same thing, right? You do this and you do that faster. So we take on this project. We worked 2 crews. We got it done in 9 days. We built a 20,000 square foot building. We got the building done in 9 days. And so that had just happened. I got given this bonus. Now I'm just a very young man, but I'm not trying to glorify, but I'm just trying to paint this picture how we get to where we get. Okay? So there, I'm a young man. I'm like early 20s. I've got my house paid off. I've got land paid off. I've got all this stuff. I just got this bonus. But all my life, my aunts, uncles, all different people in my life said, when you get your house paid off, you're going to feel so good. They were like in their 50s, pushing 60s. When you get that, that's going to be so good. So I had that in my mind. Like, when you get that, it's going to be so good. I remember that day, I got this bonus, I had all this stuff, it was all paid, everything was done. I'm early 20s, and I went in heavy depression because it didn't do anything for me. And my wife and my kids, they were really young, they went down to Abbotsford for the weekend, and I was home alone. I went down into my basement, and I took out a handgun, and I said, you know what? It's all a lie. Life is a lie. People tell you that this is going to do something for you. It's not true. People tell you things. It's all a lie. So I took out a handgun, and I thought, you know what? I'm not the kind of guy that wants to live a lie. But somehow, at the time, I wasn't praying to God. I wasn't saying, God, help me with this. I was just going through it. But somehow, I never ended up taking and pulling that trigger. Now, I never told anybody this for years and years and years because I didn't know how to tell people about this. So what I decided, I said, you know what? Maybe maybe I can, like this void inside my heart. Has anybody ever had a void inside your heart that you can't fill? Like kind of like a monster in the basement that like at first you could throw it like a cracker and it would be satisfied, and then later you just throw it like a a bag of groceries and it seemed to be satisfied, and pretty soon you're just shoveling stuff in there and you cannot satisfy it. This ache in your heart that just nothing can fill. And so I was like, maybe if I just push it with business even a little bit harder. So for the next few years, we took every single job that came by. I mean, we did every school. We were working the province. We were all over the place. Any job that came by. Until contractors would call me up and say, "Luke, have you got enough work yet?" Other bricklayers, masons. So we were building this masonry structures. And he said, "Do you have enough work yet?" And I said, "I'll tell you. I'll call you when I got enough work." Because it wasn't enough. And so we're just doing this over and over and over. And so finally one day, I realized like I'm gone like every week. I come home every second week on the weekend for like just a couple of days. And when I come home, guess what's on my mind? Yeah, right. Yeah. Work is on your mind because that's all you're living in. And so from the outside, everything looked good, right? You know, sometimes have you ever looked into someone's life and say, "Oh man, I wish I had their life. Man, that looks good. Man, they got it made. It's so easy." I can just tell you this, you'd never ever want to look into someone's life and say, "I wish I had their life," because you don't know what they might be actually going through. So our life looked good on the outside, but on the inside, I had this huge void in my life that I couldn't seem to satisfy. And so there I am. I'm like trying to fill it with work. I'm trying to fill it with money. I'm trying to do all these things, but nothing. And so there I come home one weekend, and so I go to church with my family. And some of you may go to church. Some of you may not go to church. I have no idea. But I went to church, and when I'm there, I'm thinking about all the different things. But the guy that was up there, he was talking about love and joy and peace. And I'm like, I don't even know if I don't even think that can be true. And then he said, yeah, when you have this, it'll just change your life. And I looked around, and I started looking around in the church. And there's people, and I thought, I know that person doesn't like that person. I know that person doesn't like, and they avoid each other. Now I'm sure that was just the only place where I went. And I'm sure it doesn't happen anywhere else. I'm sure it doesn't happen in other families. I'm sure it doesn't happen in other churches or schools or homes. But in that one, I looked and I said, I know they don't like it. And then I started thinking, and he made this challenge. He said, I want to challenge you to read your Bible for 60 days. And I was like, 60 days? Like, do you know how much stuff you can do in 60 days? Like, we built a Winners in like 9 days. I don't have 60 days. He's like, if you read the Bible in 60 days, it'll change your life. And I was sitting there and I thought, you know what? This is actually, it's either true or it's a complete lie. It's either true or it's a complete lie. Has anyone else had those thoughts that I'm talking about right now? Yeah. So I go home and it's just like on my mind, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot, but I'm not going to do 60 days. I'm a deal guy. I like to make deals. So I'm like, okay, all right, God, if you're really there, I'm going to give you 30 days. I thought, let's go in half, right? So I'm kind of an early riser. And so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I like to get up early. My phone starts to ring for business at 5 a.m. And so how am I going to do this? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do it for 30 days. And I said in my mind, I said, if this isn't real, like if you can't actually have what this guy was talking about, where the Bible says love and joy and peace, if you can't have it, then let's just stop pretending. Does that sound good? Like, I mean, if you can't actually have it, like if I said, hey, Nathan, I got $100 here for you, want it? But if I never gave it to you and I kept telling you, hey, come over here, I got it for you, and I just kept walking away, come on, and then, Arlo, come on, I got it, come on. And after a while, you'd say, you know what, Luke, I don't know. Like either let's have it or like get out of my face. And so I said, okay, well, either it's real or it's not. So I said, okay. So I said, if I got to get up at 3 or 3:30, then I'm going to do it. And so I can't tell you what I was reading. I don't remember. But I remember getting up and reading and just like, okay, God, what do I look for? Because I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't asking for God in my life. And so it was the 20th day. And I said 30 days. And it was the 20th day, and I'm there, and I've said, God, you have 10 more days. Or I will make sure my kids and my family and anyone I know will never, ever look at this, because if you can't have it, then what's the point? It's like, I see the sign that was before, it said health, health. If you can't have health, why try? Like if it's just a lie. And it was just like a voice spoke to me as clear as day. And I was sitting there on my desk, and so I'm just saying, you got 10 days left. And as this voice just said, Luke, you have exactly what you want. You've got exactly what you want. You don't want what I've got. And you're getting the results of what you want. And it just hit me. And as I sat there, I thought, the only way I'm even hearing this is because I've been asking just for a little guidance. Because it sort of felt like Christianity was like a carrot in front of a donkey. You never give it to them, but you try and keep them moving. But that is a lie. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, okay. So I've chosen this. It's not that God's doesn't want to be a part of my life. And I found that by reading this little book. And so what I started to do is just every morning, I started to just keep getting up, 3:30, 4, whatever time it was. I'd get up in the morning. And I'd be down in the basement, and I'd say, okay, God, I got all these things in my life. I got I'm pretty greedy. I've been going after money, right? And I'm I'm everything. I got it all. And God started to just do these little tiny moves in my life, which changed my heart. Now, if we fast forward, now we're fast forwarding here, and we're going along, and all of a sudden, God works in areas in our life, like we say, like the question is like, is God active? Like, does He even care about you? Right? If you just zoom back and you see this little planet, when you're flying, if you're flying an airplane and you look down, and you see down there, and the buildings look so small, and you say, like, do you matter to God? Have you ever wondered that? So I'm like, okay, you want to help me with these things. So God started to go into my business. And He started, because He didn't worry, at the time I did not know my wife was on antidepressants. She had gone to the doctor, she's on antidepressants, she couldn't handle it. But He didn't take me to that, He took me right into the business. Because remember, from a young boy, I was like this accumulation, trying to get whatever I could. And I ended up having nothing inside. Like, I was empty. I had stuff, but I didn't have anything inside. And so in the contracting world, in the construction world, everyone's kind of like, it's pretty tough. It's like you have to fight for every inch you get. And so nobody talks about God in the construction world, at least where I was. And so when God started to change my heart, I wasn't talking about Him either. But one day I remember I went to the one job site. I came there, and this one guy we had working, and I could see something on his face. There was something wrong. And I looked at him, because before I wasn't really trying to pay attention to them. I was like making sure everything's happening. And I looked, I could see something. I said, what's wrong? He said, oh, I got some problems at home. And I said, oh, okay. Well, he said, and I left. And that night he called me up, and he said, Luke, can you come over to our house? I said, sure. I come over to his house. His wife and him are sitting there. And he said, Luke, what's happened to you? I said, what do you mean? He said, what's happened in the last 3 months in your life? He said, because I grew up, his dad was a Pentecostal preacher. And he said, I've grown up, my dad was a Pentecostal preacher. And he said, I've never seen what's happened in your life happen in my dad's life. He said, how do we get that? I said, well, I don't really, I'll just tell you what I did. And I just told him the story. And him and his wife were there. They're like, we need something in our life. Our life is void. And so what happens is like all of a sudden you see that God starts changing your heart. And so God became very, very real to me and active, because I could see it right in front of me. And I could feel my heart changing. Where before I just had this void, like it wouldn't matter what, all of a sudden I started getting this, like I could be content. How many of you want contentment? Like, honestly, like, you think about the word contentment, like it's like content. That means like you're content, like if you have whatever car you have, like whatever house you have. Your neighbors might have another house. Maybe you got, I ride snow bikes. I don't know if you, like it's a dirt bike with a track on it. And the guys this year, there's a group of us that go out, and they've got these new snow bikes now that they don't want, if you don't have the newest mountaintop snow bike, you can't ride with them. My one friend came over, he's like, yeah, I can't ride because I've got 2 year, my bike's 2 years old, and it's got it's a timber sled, and now they don't want us to ride because it's not a mountaintop. Now it seems kind of funny, but that's how it is. That's what we're dealing with a lot of times. It's like if you don't have this, you can't be a part of it. So contentment is something that you get not from having the best item, but having something that's way beyond that. And so I started to get that in my heart, like I didn't need to have all the different things I thought that would bring happiness. And so I got to finish this part of the business side off, because it's really what really changed everything for me. Is that so I'm going along, and I could tell you so many stories with that, but in that time period, I go back to that very same basement, and I get this little book, and it's a book. It was on stewardship. Does everyone know what stewardship is? It's like, well, it could be anything though. Whatever you have, and then using it. How you use it. How do you manage it? How do you use it, right? And so I'm reading this this little book on stewardship, and it's blowing my mind. Because I always thought that because I worked hard, I deserved what I got. Right? Right? Is that everyone else the same? You work hard, you deserve what you get. So I thought, because I worked hard, this is what I deserved. And as I'm going along and I'm reading this book, it's like all of a sudden I'm seeing like something other side, like, oh, it's like maybe it's not because of how hard I worked. And then I started thinking in other countries, if you've traveled around, you see other countries, places, people work very hard. They work very hard, and they don't have anything. So I started thinking, well, it's not necessarily because I work hard. What does this mean? And then it was saying, all of it is God's. I'm like, okay, all right, God, how does that work? Because I work for this, and I do all this, so how can this business and the money I make from this business be yours? Like, I read in the Bible, it says something, it says like, 10% tithe. Okay, I can somehow squeeze out a 10% tithe, but how can it all be yours? As I'm sitting there, I get this, I'm like like, how does this work? How do it? And I got this little view, like, it sounds kind of funny sometimes when you say it, because it's like you see, it's almost like it's almost like you just see it like on TV, but it's like in your mind. Has that ever happened to anybody with something? And so I see it, and it's like God says to me, Luke, your business is like a set of keys, like a car. I'm like, okay. And it's, you borrow it. So if you can imagine, I just said, I don't know your name. What's your name? Trevor. So I just come over to Trevor and I say, hey, could I borrow your truck? Or?
It's all yours.
Okay, so it's kind of the keys. This is real good. So he just gave me the keys. This is a GMC for sure, right? Yeah. So he gave me the keys. So I take Trevor's keys. I got his keys, and I put it in the truck, and I start it up, and I start driving. And now when I leave, and I'm, Trevor's right here. He's watching me, and I'm like 10 and 2, right? Is that still the position, or has it changed? Still 10. Okay. So it's 10 and 2, and I'm just really, seatbelts on, and I'm just idling out of there. Hey, Trevor, thanks a lot. I'll be right back, and I'm driving it out, and I know whose truck it is, right? It's Trevor's truck, and he's just lent it to me. So I'm driving it, but we never said how long he was lending it to me. So it's like a week, and it's like 2 weeks, and it's, there's a bit of a distance between us, and so I'm over here, and now I'm like, hey. Andrew, hey, you guys want to go for a ride? Yeah, okay, all right, jump in my truck. So we jump in the truck, and we go for a ride, and then I stop by over here. Hey, you guys want to jump in too? Or I pull up to the stoplight, and maybe the music's up a little bit. He's got a really good stereo, so it's turned up pretty good, and I start thinking it's my truck, right? I start treating it like it's my truck. And somebody comes by like, wow, nice truck. Yeah, it's my truck. And God just said to me, he said, Luke, the business is the same way. You think it's your business, but it's only lent to you. Thanks for your keys, Trevor. And he said, it's only lent to you. And you'll only have it for a window of time. And he said, your grandfather had it for a window of time, your dad had it, you'll only have it for a window of time. And so I'm sitting there, and this might sound crazy, but I'm having a conversation with God. And I'm saying, okay, well, what does that look like? Because I've read this thing, and it said, I thought it belonged to me. And this is, and I said, God, if you want me to give my business, I guess, or I thought it was my business, to you, I want you to show me how. And within less than 5 minutes, he just laid it out for me. And I'll tell you what it was, because it still blows my mind. He said, Luke, give 50% of your business, what you make, profit, back to the community. I was like, whoa. 50% of what I profit back to the community. And then he said, and then give, I thought that's good enough. That's good. Well, let's stop there, 50%. And then he said, give another 25% back to all your workers. But don't tell them. Right? Because we do incentives, don't we? If you're in business, it incentivize you. Like if you do this, then you'll get this. Don't tell them. And then run your business off 25%. Now, I'm not giving this as a business plan to anybody here tonight. You're going to want to know that, I'm not telling how this is how it should happen for you. I'm just telling you how it happened for me. Because remember, God was trying to get my heart. Because my heart was wrapped up around this stuff. And I looked at that and I was like, this is a sure fail. There's no business that's going to give 75% of their profit away and be able to go anywhere. But now remember, the last little while, God had been doing something in my heart, and I said, but God, You've done something in my heart that I've never felt before. You've given me contentment. You've given me joy. You've given me peace. You've done so I'm going to trust you with this. Oh, and another thing he said is, you work for me. You're not the boss. So right away again, I remember I told you I'm a negotiator. I said, okay. So that means you have to take care of the scheduling. So there I am negotiating again. So I'm negotiating with God. I said, you take care of the scheduling, I'll do whatever else. And I'll do this. So I just told my I told my dad, and he was like, oh man, that's crazy. I didn't tell anybody else. And then we went to work. And so we're just going to work, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to go broke for sure. It's going to be over. We're just going along and going to work, and guys would call me up and say, hey, I need this building built, or I need this one built. And I would just say yes, because I wasn't in charge of the schedule. They'd say, will May 24th work? I'd be like 3 months about, oh yeah, no problem. Well, yeah, no problem, we can do it. And I would just always say yes. And then as we get closer, I would say, oh God, I don't know, how are we going to do this? I got 5 jobs landing on the same week to start. And we've already on jobs, we're not going to be able to do it. So I wonder how you're going to do it. And if you wouldn't know it, by Friday, I'd all of a sudden, a guy would call me up. You know what, I know we were supposed to start. I'm so sorry, I apologize. I know you're ready to go. But we just we did an archaeological dig and we found this thing and the site shut down for 6 weeks. Oh, hey, no problem. You just tell us when you're ready. We'll be there. This is really what I did. And it's just over and over. And by the end of that day, all those jobs were done. Like, it was cleared up. And I was like, phew. Sometimes my blood pressure was getting on. I was like, okay. But I don't want to stress for God because he's supposed to get it. So I'm like, and over and over. And at the end of the 1 year, this one contractor, we'd done 9 jobs for him that year, all across the province. And he came to me, he called me, he said, Luke, where are you right now? I said, I'm just going through Sycamoose. He said, can we stop and have coffee? I said, okay, why? He's like, there's something I got to ask you. Okay. So I found him, and we pull into this thing, and I grab a tea, and he sits down, and we're there, and he's like, Luke, he said, I've been in business for years. And he said, all year long, every time I asked you if you could do it on a specific date, you said yes, and you guys did it on the date you said. We have no other contractors that are able to do that. How do you do it? So there I am, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, how do I tell him? Right? How do I tell him? This is kind of nice, eh? You can kind of keep an eye on everybody. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to tell this guy because I got to tell him that I've partnered up with God. He's going to think I'm a loony. Right? So I was sitting there and I said, well, I don't know if you're going to want to know. He's like, no, I want to know. He said, we want to know. I said, it's going to sound strange. He's like, try. I said, well, and so I told him the story. I said, this is how it was, and I've actually partnered with God, and I actually work for him, and he looks after the scheduling. And he looks at me, and he said, and he just got this deep look on his face, and he said, Luke, I'm from a Mennonite background. He said, I was raised Mennonite. He said, I haven't gone to church in years. He said, but he said, what you're saying, I believe it. He said, can we meet again? I want to know, I want to get reacquainted with that God again. It kind of gives me chills actually as I say it, because it's kind of like reliving it. I couldn't take credit for the scheduling. So now I'm partnered with God. So when we say, is God active? He wants to be, he doesn't want to just, it's not like it's something that's like a jumping bean in the background. It's like, like I'm really active. It's like, he's active in different ways. He wants to get like into the small of your heart, into the little areas of your life, the ones that you're out of control with. The parts of your life that are actually just running you, driving you. The ones that you can't shovel enough groceries in to feed the monster that's under the floor now. That just grew. It was like this small little thing. It's like that, kind of an infectious little weed that just grows and grows, and then all of a sudden you can't control it. He wants to get into those areas. And he cares about all these little details. So there I am, and I'm in this construction and bricklaying business. And bricklayers are not like really, they don't wake up looking, they're nice guys, but they're rough. And that construction world. And so I'm like, okay, God, how do I share what you've done in my life? And I want to back up, because as I was going through all this stuff, I said, when I was actually trying to find God, like, it sounds funny, but like you have to kind of, sometimes it's like he's there, but we can't find him. I took everything back and I said, okay, I don't want to go back all those, I don't want to just go to church. I don't want to just do this because people say you should do this because it looks good. Like, people will say to you, you got to go to church. Now, if you go to church or if you don't go to church, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I'm saying there's a lot of people that are going to church that don't know Jesus. And there's a lot of people that don't go to church that do know Jesus. What God, I was like, God, I don't want to not have the real thing. Like, when you've been void of something and then you get it, like when you get a real glass of water and you're so thirsty, it's so hot out, you get a water, you don't want pop, you don't want this, you don't want that, you just want something that will quench that deepest thirst that all your organs are crying for. And so I said, I want that. I don't want anything else. So cut everything out, and I just want to get to know who you are. And kind of cut the noise. And so there I am. Now I'm in this construction, and I'm just like, and God's just showing up. Like, I didn't have to go to church to see God. I was seeing him on the job sites. And so, you want me to keep telling some more story with this? I keep going. Okay. All right. So, I don't know what time. Oh, it's over. So this one day I get this call. Well, okay, I'll back up. So remember, I get up early in the morning. I was getting up early because my phone literally would start ringing at 5 a.m. That was just a known thing. After 5, you could call me. And so I'd get up early in the morning. This one morning, my phone started ringing too early. Maybe I got up just a little bit later. And it was like my feet were, by the time they hit the ground, I had no time. And so I'm just running out the door. And this voice says to me, Luke, you're going to go out. I had 3 meetings that I had to meet up with. And they were just boom, boom, back to back. And I was going out the door because I want to be prompt, right? I've said I'm going to be there. And this voice says to me, Luke, are you going to go out the door without anything? And I stop. And I'm standing there, and my wife's like, what are you doing? She said, you got those 3 meetings. You got to make sure you go, because my office was in my house. And that voice says, Luke, what if somebody needs something and you don't have anything to give? And so I'm fighting with everything inside me, because I'm like, I've got these meetings. I've got deadlines. Like, my word. Like, I was taught from a young boy that what your word is. Like, if you say, hey, I'm going to be there, you got to be there. If you say I'm going to do the job for $500 and it costs you $1,000 to do it, you do it for $500. So now I'm sitting there, and that little voice. Has anyone ever had a little voice, like something that kind of pricks your heart somehow? And so I turn around, I drop my bag, and I go back into my office, and my wife said, what are you doing? I said, I missed the most important part. I just got on my knees and I just took this little book and I just opened it up and said, God, you got to do this thing in my heart, because if I lose that, I've lost everything. I'm back to square. I'm like, I've got nothing. And I know what nothing feels like. Nothing cannot be satisfied. Nothing satisfies it. And so I get on my knees, I go there, I get back up, after whatever time it was, I go and I quickly tell everyone, hey, I'm going to be running late. I told everyone. So I come into this office. I come into this guy's office. It's in Salmon Arm, BC. He's down near the lake. He's on the 3rd floor. He's looking out over the lake. You know, I come in there and just everything's perfect in that office. And we were supposed to build it was a hot springs resort. So we were coming in, I was going to meet him. He wanted to show me the plans. And so we come in there and we sit down. Now I'm in a rush because now if I can speed this one up, I can probably get to my other 2 on time. So we're going through the stuff. Yeah. Okay, looking good. He said, Luke, tell me something about yourself. I'm like, tell me something about yourself? Like, what does this have? Let's just get on with the job here. He's like, no, tell me something about your company. Tell me something about you. I'm like, tell me something about you. So, okay, I'm a 3rd generation. I'm trying to and that same little voice says, Luke, tell him what I've done for you. I don't know this guy at all. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, and he doesn't look like he is probably interested. He's got everything he needs. You know, have you ever judged anyone by looking at him and say, he needs something, or that guy could use a new shirt or this? What? Right? We kind of do that, and so I'm fighting with this thing in my head. I don't know this guy. I'm going to look like a fool. Why would I tell him? And he asked me again, Luke, tell me something about yourself. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't even know where to start. So I started telling him. I said, well, this is what actually, and he kept saying, tell me about your business. How does it work? What is your business like? And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you something pretty crazy. I know you don't know me, but I've partnered up with God. He's like, what does that mean? And so I go through all this stuff, and I tell him about what God has done in my life. And, the secretary kept coming to the office. I kept coming, hey, you got another call. He's like, hold my call. And finally he's like, hold all my calls. He shuts the door. We're talking, and he finally says, Luke, you have no idea what's going on in my life today. I said, yeah, you're right. I have no idea. He's like, right now, my wife and I are going to get a divorce. And he said, and I am in the biggest turmoil of my entire life. And he said, can you pray for me? Now, I don't know him. He said, I haven't been to church or anything like that for years. I have nothing. He said, but I need what you've got. And we go into his office. It looks over the lake, and it has everything's done just perfect in it. The millwork, everything. I mean, and we get on our knees, and I pray for this guy. And every single appointment that day was like that one. Every appointment. So, when we ask ourselves, is God active? Does he care about the little things? We need to know that he cares about every little detail of our life. The business for me exploded in the sense of what I was able to do for sharing. I didn't go to church to share. I just went to work, and God was just opening little doors, because in everyday life where we bump up against people have problems. People like you and I, who look pretty normal, have things in their heart that can't be band-aided. They can't be band-aided with a new truck. They can't be band-aided with a better paying job. They can't be band-aided with anything except that drink of water that's living. And so I don't know where any of you are in your life, where you're at, how thirsty you are. But I want you to know that this book changed my life. And I know that there's been a lot of hard things over the years that has come, and people, have been hurt because of people who have said they're Christians. But just because people say they're a fisherman doesn't mean they catch fish. Just because someone says, they do something doesn't mean they're actually good at it. So don't blame other people for what they, don't blame God for what other people are professing. Now, should I wrap this up? It's okay, 7:40. Okay, so I'm going to be back here tomorrow. We're gonna do it tomorrow night at 7, and I'm going to share some stories that have happened in the last 24 months, 3 weeks, stuff that has been like just everyday stories. And I want you to know that no matter that God cares for you. There's a text I actually wanted to read. It's out of Romans. It's Romans chapter 2, verse 4. And it says, "Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that His kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" I always thought that God wanted to take from us. I always felt religion and all that stuff. It was like, oh man, it's like it's over. You're just handcuffed. It's done. But when I started to read this book, I started to see that He wanted to give me things. And so each one of us here tonight, He wants to give each one of us something. And you might have something right specific that you can think of right now. You're like, I need this. I need this more than anything. He wants to give you it. He wants to give you good things. He wants to give you good things. You can trust Him. So I hope you can make it as we share some more stories. And yeah.
Luke, just a second. As you were talking, I found it interesting. You got the story about the truck. You're borrowing Trevor's truck, and eventually you think it's your truck. And God says, Luke, your business is my truck. You're driving my truck.
Yeah.
And when you said that, what I heard for me is my life is God's truck. Did anybody else hear that? That's sort of what I heard. My life is God's truck. And I'm driving it around, so it's an interesting thought. Anybody else have anything come to them? Not particularly on that point, on any other point? Something jump out to you?
Where am I driving my truck and what am I putting in the
Where are you driving your truck? Yeah. Interesting.
I'm curious to know more about how your business changed and evolved.
Okay.
Numbers and all sorts.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know how that worked out.
I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
So, and I was curious too. I was like, and I had a friend said to me, he said, Luke, you have such a great business. You've been around for 3 generations. It's too bad it's going to close. Right? Like, it's just too bad. And I was like, yeah, I guess that is too bad. But I guess I don't know what to do, because now I've made a deal and I got to stick to my word, and I'm hoping he's going to stick to his word. And so I went along in that one year. I just stopped looking. I just stopped even looking at the numbers or anything, because I thought, it doesn't even matter. And at the end of that year, I had to go see my accountant. And I mean, I can kind of pay attention, but I'm not really paying attention. And my accountant said, hey, we got to work some things out. So I go to my accountant. And you might find this interesting, but it was right during a lot of this happened, this particular event happened right during the recession of 2008. And I went to my accountant, and so people's, stuff is like the world was dropping. It was a little bit before, but anyway, so I go to my accountant, and he said, Luke, we got to figure out what we're going to do with all this money. So I said, well, let's talk about it. And we pull up the things, and our profit had gone to 50% profit in our business. So we weren't like, I hadn't told anyone I hadn't told any of our workers. Remember, I said, because God said, don't manipulate them, right? Because I could be pretty good at that. And we were at 50% profit. And I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, whoa. He said, so how do you want to take dividends? I said, oh, I don't. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, it's really simple, because like 50% of that now, we got to go back to the community. He's like, what? And I said, this other 25%, I got to give to all the guys. So and it was the most exciting time. Because I got to go, and I wrote these checks, and we were we were working 3 provinces at the time, and I had these checks, and some of the guys got bonuses that were more than they made all year. And just to give you a view, like of the wages were, they have just come. I sold that business. I sold that business in 2010. It's a whole other story. But the wages have just caught up this past year to what I paid wages in 2010. And I paid those guys bonuses. So one of the guys I gave as I didn't know how to do this. So they'd jump in my truck, and I'd go to all the different jobs, and I'd say, I got something for you. And they were used to getting bonuses. I gave them a bonus, and the one guy, he opened it and he threw it. He just threw it. It was like 1.5 times his yearly wage, and he just threw it at me, and he said, "What is that? What is that? How did you give that to me?" I said, "I didn't give it to you. It's not for me. This is from God. I couldn't give that to you." I mean, other guys, it just hugged me, big bricklayers just hugging me. It was. So I'm careful how I tell this story, because I don't want people to think that it's a way of getting or making money with God. But it was something He showed me, that He can do things with things that you can't even imagine. And it was very exciting to be a part of, to watch. And then in 2008, 2009, all that, as the world was in a recession, our profit just doubled during that whole time. I was turning down work. I had to give work away because we had so much work. And yeah, there's so many stories in there, but that was, God did things that we couldn't even imagine in it.
Does anyone else have a question or comment? Don't all speak at once. Then, yeah.
Yeah, so no, it was no problem, because when you're working for the boss, I don't know, it was just like it was one of the most interesting, freeing mental things in my head that I all of a sudden I realized that I wasn't, because a lot of times you feel like it's on you. If you're a business owner, you feel like it's all on you, and I got to make this decision, I got to make this work. And all of a sudden, like, no, it's like, yeah, I'll say yeah. It's so easy if you're an employee to say yes. If the boss says go do it, you say, oh yes. Oh, you want that done? Yes, yeah. And then the boss has to work out the rest. So the 25%, it was not a problem. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but it wasn't a problem, because I just, yeah. No, but I didn't keep 25%. That was 25% to keep the business going. Mm-hmm. I took a wage that all the other guys did, and I didn't give myself a bonus. yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Interesting.
I'm just going to say that as you were sharing, Luke, a couple thoughts came to mind, but one is just your faith and trust building up to this allowed you to let go of control.
Yeah.
Give it to God, and then just to follow his daily instructions or interactions with you. So it's like letting go.
Yeah.
If people say, Jesus, take the wheel, maybe sometimes we need to get in the back trunk and just let him drive.
Yeah, it felt like that a few times.
How did you go back to community? Was there specific requirements that you decided for yourself, or that they taught you?
I actually, yeah, and there's actually one that specifically. So what I did, this is just so because now all of a sudden 50%. Like if you took 50% of after you paid all your stuff and you had 50% of what your savings or whatever you had, and you had 50%, you put that in an account over here, just put it over here, and you have that. You know that needs to be given back to the community in some way. It's it's probably the most freeing, interesting way of doing it that I ever experienced. So I'd have that and I'd say, okay, what do we do? So I remember going into Tim Hortons one time. And I come in there. I go into Tim Hortons and there was a bunch of guys, so they wanted me to get them something. I don't know what I was in there. And the lady, the cashier, she was talking. I could say, and then she'd go and she'd kind of, I said, what's wrong? She's like, I got an abscess tooth and I can't afford to get it fixed, the dental. And I said, really? And so right away I was like, okay, well, what's your number? What's your name? I said, I sent her, then I said, well, here you go. Take this card, go there, go to this place and tell them I'll take care of it. She's like, what? I said, just go to this, I know the dentist, go there, tell them I'll take care of it. And then the dentist called me back and he said, that was a very honest lady that you had do that, because there was only one, he was a surgeon, he did the surgery, it's the only one that did it, that area. And he said, she was very honest, because he said, I was trying to make some more money on her, because I knew you'd have to pay. And so I said, well, why don't we do these other ones too? She said, no, I just said this one, and that's it. Another interesting time, and so through that though, it's like this learning opportunity. Like, so people needed a car, or whatever. I mean, but God also had to, your heart doesn't just instantly become just overnight, necessarily so generous, but you also don't want to be taken advantage of, right? And so there was this particular time a contractor called me and he said, hey, we're doing a building for, he said, we're doing a bike shed for it's called Venture Training in Vernon, for the mentally challenged. Is that the right term now? Anyways, they always change. So he said, would you build this for us and tell me how much? And so as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I told him a price, and then I thought, no, this would be a good way to give back to the community. I got to give some money to the community. I haven't figured exactly how much. So I said, well, I just slashed it in half. And then 2 seconds later, I just said, we'll do it for free. I says, this is great. You started at this, and then, because we are in business, right? So and then it came to mind. And that bike shed was supposed to be like 12 by 14. Not a big deal. 3 months later, he calls me up. He said, hey, we're ready for you to do the work. I said, okay. He said, when can you? I said, I'll just send some guys there next week. He said, come by and take a look at it. I said, I don't need to. I got enough things going. I'll just send some material there. It's like 12 by 40. He said, yeah, you better stop by. I said, I don't think I need to. He said, you need to stop by. So I go in there, one night after work, I pull in, and I pull up to this site, and it's a commercial building. It's big. And I pull up there, and I'm like, I come to the one guy that I knew him. I said, hey, Elroy, I said, where's the bike shed? He's like, ha, ha. He said, no, they've upgraded it to this. I'm like, what? It's 20 feet high now. They want it. He showed me the plans. Like, 80 feet long. You know, I mean, so then I'm angry because I'm like, it's taking advantage of me because I said I was going to do it for free. So I remember just feeling so angry. I'm like, oh man. I go home and I'm just like, and my accountant sends me the number of what's supposed to go back to the community. And I priced out that building and it was exactly what was supposed to go back to the community. So I go I go back there and I talked to him and I said, you tricked me. But I said, God's good. And so anyways, we built this building and he calls me up, once it's all done, and he said, hey, I want you, would you come to the grand opening? I'm like, well, if I can, I'll swing by. And he said, no, I need you to commit to coming to the grand opening. I said, okay, I'll try and come. So the morning of it happens, and we were getting a piano. My daughter was playing piano, so we had a piano ordered, and he's calling, and finally my dad calls me and said, hey, you're going to that thing today? I said, yeah, I'll try and make it. Hour later, he calls me, he said, Luke, are you guys gone yet? I said, no, we're just leaving. He said, they're waiting for you. I said, well, what is this thing? Like, what is this? So he had brought in all the mental health out of, flew him in from Vancouver, all over. Like the head of the government. I mean, and they had this thing. The mayor was there. We show up, and my dad's called because my dad went there. He's like, Luke, they're waiting for you. So this ribbon there, we come there, we're like, oh, okay, so we're there. Why are they waiting for us? Just do this thing. I mean, like, what, there's lots of buildings that get, ceremonies, right? Like just, and so we're standing there in the background, and Klaus says, no, come. We come up there and we stand up front. Why do we want to stand up front? I want to be up front. So we're up there in front of this building, and the mayor has the scissors, and things there, and they go to the mayor, and he takes the scissors out of the mayor's hands, and I'm like. And he gives them to me. I said, I don't want to cut this. I don't want to. No, he said, you got to cut this. So, okay. So the news there, and we're all there. Me and my wife are there, and I'm like, it felt like I was so, out of my element. So he cut this thing, and he said, okay, we've got all these people. We've got food here. We've got all this stuff, and we want you to come in. We want you to say some words. Oh, yeah, speech. And we've got everyone. He's flown everybody, like everyone in BC that had anything to do with mental health and government, and so there's, I don't know, probably 80 people there. So we come in there, and so I'm saying, what can I say? What am I going to say? How am I going to say? Yeah, tell him. Because he said, Luke, if you wouldn't have done this, we wouldn't have done this building. So I'm going to tell them how I did this. So I actually went up front, and I said, well, I wish I could tell you something good, but this is for the story. And I was pretty angry. So I tell him this whole story of how I was going to do a 12 by 14 bike shed, and I got into this thing. And I told him how God had to change my heart. And I walk out of there, and another guy comes following me out of there. And he comes over and he says, I need what you got. I need that. How do I get that? And he said, do you go to church? Where do you go to church? I said, well, he said, where do you go to church? The next day he was at church. He came there, he just showed up. And so I realized that, like these things that we do, like how do we do it? Like your heart's, you kind of learn as you go. Like, cause, nobody wants to get taken advantage of. And trust me, there's plenty of people that want to take advantage, that try to take advantage. But God also, because He's actively working to fill that part of your heart, and He also tries to empty it. So I'm sorry, that's a long answer, but anyways. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Luke, would you pray for us before
Sure. Yeah.
before we go?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Father in heaven, we just come to you tonight, and we're just talking about stories of how you've done different things in my life, and we're thinking about stories in our own lives, and how thirsty we have been, how thirsty we are, how thirsty we are right now. And Lord, you know each person that's here, you know the needs, you know the specific needs. And you care about the specific needs of each person. You know this town. You know what this town needs. And you know families. You know what the families represented here. You know the situations. I just pray that you would just work in each person's life in a way that they would be able to recognize there's a God that cares for them. And that you would show them in ways that they would understand. And then they would hear that little voice that I've heard many times that's absolutely transformed my life. And they would just follow it. Whatever you're asking or talking or speaking to them, however that is, I just want to pray for you specifically. If he's talking to you in some way, just don't resist it. He's really good. So thank you, Jesus, for everything. In your name, amen.
Man, thank you. So 7 o'clock tomorrow night, once again.